Hi guys, so today we are going to start with a bit of plant physiology. In plant physiology you have a chapter which is called growth and development in plants. There are two sections in it which talks about the effect of light intensity and the effect of temperature on flowering in a plant, right? So every plant has two phases in its life. It has a vegetative phase in which it grows. This is the phase for growth, and then comes the reproductive phase. In the reproductive phase, a plant basically flowers, and then pollination happens, fertilization happens, fruiting happens if there is a concept of fruit in that plant. Angiospermic plants will obviously give you flowers and fruits, and then from there the next cycle, the seeds will come and the next plants will come. So there is this impact of both sunlight as well as temperature on the reproductive phase. So to shift or to change from the vegetative phase to the reproductive phase, there are two factors which help plants. First factor is sunlight, and that factor is called, that phenomenon is called photoperiodism. This shift of a plant from its vegetative state to its reproductive state under the influence of sunlight is known as photoperiodic induction. So now, to understand photoperiodism, it's important to understand the concept of critical light period. So what is the critical day length or the critical light period? It's basically the amount of minimum sunlight required to induce flowering in plants. So the critical day length usually varies between 12 to 16 hours of sunlight in a day. So in tropical countries like ours, India, the critical sunlight is usually, critical day length is usually over 12 hours most of the year, correct? Now plants will grow depending on this critical period, because according to the critical period their blooming or their flowering will be influenced. On the basis of that, we can classify them into three major groups. The first is a short day plant. So as the name suggests, these plants will bloom after having been exposed to a 18-hour night. So if you plant such plants in summer, they will keep growing, they'll become bushy, they'll become big, and when in winter comes and the sunlight falls below 6 hours, that is when their best flowering will happen, and then they will give you fruits, correct? A very good way to understand and remember is to understand that the lesser the amount of sunlight. So when do we have less sunlight during the year? During winters. So flowers that will bloom during the winters will also give us fruits then, right? So for example, strawberry, it's a winter fruit. Yeah? So it will start to bloom in the coming months, right? So now strawberry will also grow in India, but again we do get better strawberries in colder countries, right? Because in India the critical sunlight never actually reaches a 6-hour day. You know, we don't really have 6-hour days. We have 8 to 10-hour days during the winters. That is why you will get winter fruits better in winter countries, obviously. Berries, for example, tangerines, oranges, all of them. Okay. Now, the bang opposite of that is the long day plant. The long day plant will give you flowers only having been exposed to 18-hour days. So they will grow through the winter and bloom when the summer hits, correct? So a very good example is apple, right? So apple will give you flowers during the summer and fruits during close to winter, correct? So now again, these are plants which would grow better in our tropical regions, because we usually get a lot of 18-hour day in the whole year, right? Coming to day neutral plants. So as I told you, the critical hour is 12 hours, critical period, right? So now certain plants, they do not have any direct relationship on the amount of sunlight as long as they get this 12 hours. So if there is 12 hours of sunlight, they will be able to flower. So these are your annual plants. These are your plants that are known as the day neutral plants. So bananas, mangoes, guavas, tomatoes, these are all plants which will only blossom if there is 12 hours of sunlight in a day. If not, then they will not blossom, and if there is more, they really it doesn't affect their blooming, correct? Now there are some things called the dual day plants. So what are dual day plants? So they require both a low critical period and a high critical period during their growth period to be able to properly grow as well as give you flowers. So short long day plants, so remember one thing, they are all short formed into SDPs, LDPs, DNPs here. So therefore this would be LSDP, long short day plant. Questions can come with abbreviations as well, so try and remember, not that difficult, right? So long short day plants, so these are short day plants, okay? These are short day plants. They require less sunlight for their reproductive phase to kick in. However, they require a long day period for optimal growth. So for growth to happen, they will need a long day period, and then they will need a short day period for flowering. Yeah, Bryophyllum is a good example. Night jasmine is a good example. Raat ki Rani, right? It usually grows during the summers, and then as winters come, autumns and winters, they start to bloom. Now, short long day plants. Again, the concept is very similar. So for SLDPs, they are long day plants, right? So for flowering, they need a longer day. They will flower in summer, but for growth, they need short days. So you have to, such plants, you have to plant it in the winter or autumn, let it grow out through the winter, short days, and then when the summer will come, they will give you blooms in full, right? A good example is wheat, rye. This is how our Kharif and Rabi seasons have also developed, right? Because these plants preferred a certain amount of sunlight which was observed by the first cultivators, and they gradually decided to make it seasonal like that, and we developed two main seasons of cultivation in India, which is Rabi and Kharif. Okay. Now, why does this happen? There are two compounds or two chemicals which are said to be responsible. One is called a florigen. The basic nature is not yet very well understood, and the other is a phytochrome. Both of them are said to be developed in the leaves, from where they go to the apical meristem and induce flowering. I hope photoperiodism was clear. Vernalization is extremely easy to understand. So vernalization, so the word vernal means to spring. So movement of a plant to spring. So it says that for a plant to shift from the vegetative to the reproductive phase, from the vegetative development to the reproductive development, they require a prolonged cold exposure. Exposure to almost -5 to 5 degrees Celsius temperatures. These temperatures, what they do, there is some research on a compound called vernalin. This question also comes. So vernalin is said to be a compound which it's kind of a hormone, yet hypothetical, but it's believed to have some role in this development. So what happens is that, so any plant which has been planted in the autumn, the more it gets a cold exposure, the better it blooms in the spring, correct? So you will notice that usually plants do come to life during the spring, right? They blossom and there are so many new flowers coming out. So vernalization has a direct role to play in it, that is cold treatment. Okay, this has very high significance in agriculture because exposing plants to cold increases flowering, and therefore it increases the yield for the season. Again, I hope this much was clear. We will meet again in another video. Thank you.